at least somebody doing something great in our city.
Well, you just said, Cody, a word that we use all the time is block out the outside, what's happening and what's being said. And basically, what's the most important thing is what's inside this locker room.
Yeah, but I mean, we fight, dog. We put a lot of hard work in this shit. Excuse me. We do it like all week. It's frustrating because we just don't get the result, but we work our ashes off. I mean, I'm in there with these guys the whole time, and I see the blood, sweat, the emotions that we put in this game, and it sucks that we get these results. But I mean, nothing's gonna change with our effort. We still gonna work. So I mean, it sucks, but we're gonna keep working always.
And welcome to another episode of the Turn Up For What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from the Great British Isles, and we're 7 down, only 10 to go, and what is a season of somewhat drudgery. I'm joined by a returning guest again, Radio 610's Landry Locker from In The Loop. Landry, how you doing?
Very good, man. I've used a lot of words to describe it. I can't say that I've used drudgery. You might have a more extensive vocab than me, but I think that is accurate. Any word you want to use to describe, this season 7 weeks in, I think would be accurate. I'm going to have to add drudgery to my arsenal.
Well, I think the build-up to Sunday was tough, and it was on, and the inter-team media was talking, and, they were almost coming across as, I can't believe you gave us this guy. You've got, arguably the second best player in franchise history, at the back end of his career. So it was always going to be a tough Sunday. But was Sunday rock bottom?
I don't think Sunday was really rock bottom. It was about what I expected. I know it's been hard to watch, but I think the rock bottom is going to be when you trade Watson and the realization sets in that, regardless of the off-field stuff, before then he wanted out and he wanted nothing to do with you because of how you have functioned as an organization the last couple of years. And to me, that's going to be rock bottom. I mean, it's also going to be a sign of, the first major step in the rebuild that could actually lead to, getting out of the situation they're in. But I don't think it was rock bottom. I think rock bottom is going to come, when Watson gets traded and you have that realization of, what the consequences for how things have gone the last couple of years are.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make a confession there. That's the first time in 11 years I didn't watch the game live. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I watched it back on the Monday morning, but I just couldn't face it, really. I obviously saw bits of it as it was on the red zone and what have you, but and it was kind of predictable. And I always think, Landry, that if you watch the broadcast, you understand what happened. If you watch the All-22, you understand how it happened. If you watch red zone, you don't really understand much context at all. But I've watched all three, and I don't think any differently of the game now than I did on Sunday at the time.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the crazy thing about the Texans this year is you watch them, and this is kind of three layers, like in a different sense with you. Like sometimes you watch and you say, well, next year, maybe this guy can turn out to be something. I don't know how many of these guys are going to be back next year. So you can't watch it that way. And then you watch it and you look at the score and you say, well, they must have just been terrible. But there have been times where they've gotten blown out where I just don't know what more they could have done. Like, I just feel like the players aren't there. So that's the frustrating thing is, like, Jacksonville can lose games and they can say, Trevor Lawrence is developing. We got some young guys that are going to do this and this. The frustrating thing about this with where we are right now, and I don't even think the rebuild has begun, is that I don't really know what's being accomplished. I like Nico Collins. I think Nico Collins could be a guy that can be here in the future. But I don't know if Davis Mills is – I don't expect Davis Mills to be the quarterback of the future. I don't know how many of these defensive guys are even going to be back on the team next year. So it's like you're watching these beatdowns and you don't even really know, like, what is this even going to look like next year? Who's going to be here? Who's not? And quite honestly, most of these guys, I don't even want to be back again. I'm tired of watching them.
Yeah, and I think it's just been the fact that it's been expensively assembled. You've borrowed future cap dollars to get a bevy of veterans, all of which are, you know, limited at best, role players on a good team if they're lucky. You piece all that together and you've got, you know, the biggest point spread in the league every Sunday. And this week gone and this week coming against the Rams was always going to be probably the toughest couple of games back-to-back stretch. But I think when you watch the games, for me, it feels like, as you said, we've not taken any steps forward. I think you've still got the same problems you had last year. You can't run the ball. Your O-line's not very good. You're looking like you're going to have to give up on some of those guys you've invested in. The coaching's not great after, you know, 6 quarters of brilliance, kind of, and then it's kind of faded away. So it feels like, you know, this was a chance to redefine Texans football this year, but we've not taken that, and it almost feels like just an iteration of last year, just changed the names. Obviously,
I just think they're killing time. I mean, I don't know. You know, I think once you get draft picks and, you know, once you clear up some of the mess, I mean, maybe that's when you can start, you know, at least hanging your hat on something. But right now, it just seems like kind of a time killer where you're just out there just to be out there right now. And, you know, they're insistent. I know David Culley said the other day that they're building a culture. I just don't know what exactly they're basing that on. I don't know what exactly that culture is. And not that the moves are costly, but some of the moves that Caserio has made lead me to believe that maybe there's a little bit of over-romanticizing culture and veterans and all this stuff. And that's kind of troubling to me when you're, you know, doing all these pick swaps for Marcus Cannon. You're bringing in Rex Burkhead to play. I think he played 4 or 5 snaps on Sunday. David Johnson's here for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. Danny Amendola led you to get rid of Kiki QT and, you know, Anthony Miller. It just seems like there's a lot of over romanticizing these guys that are like supposed to be culture guys. And, you know, they're saying that they're building the culture. I just don't know what they're basing that on. It seems like, you know, it's a word that's used quite often, but I think there's reason to believe that's just kind of an empty statement right now, especially when you see the lack of discipline, what these guys who are supposed to be culture guys are supposed to bring. Yeah. It just seems over romanticized and really kind of baseless.
Yeah, I think if you were building that with young, hungry players, undrafted free agents, you know, as many draft picks as you possibly could hold on, but instead you got, you know, you reduce your number of draft picks. You took the lowest ever class undrafted free agents. You piece all that together, and if you have to shoehorn your culture through veterans that you know, Marcus Cannon, Amendola, then I kind of suggest that, you know, maybe that culture is not necessarily conducive to winning in this situation. You know, regardless if you want to copy the sort of New England parallels over, but I think on Sunday, I think for me the offense and the defense to a degree as well is, you know, if you're going to go down swinging, but when you just go down empty with, you know, countless screens, you know, simple route patterns, not throwing the ball downfield, I just think, well, what's the point? Because you're just going out with a whimper. At least, you know, go down and have a go for it on every 4th down, which I know they did and they didn't convert, but it feels like they're just kind of, as you said, it's almost killing time, spinning the wheels, whatever phrase you want to put on it.
Yeah, the offense has been, I actually think Tim Kelly's done an all right job. I don't know how much he has to work with. I think Lovey's actually done a really good job, and that's crazy to hear, because I know you're going to look at the stats and you're going to say, you know, man, I mean, they're not. I mean, I just think they run out of gas. I don't think they have much to work with. I mean, they were down 17-0 against Buffalo or whatever it was, and I was like, damn, this should be way worse. You know, they were giving the ball away and they were hanging in there, and then I think even you know, a couple of weeks ago, when they were down 7 against Indianapolis, I was like, you know, they're doing all they can. I don't know. There have been some times where, you know, there have been some, you know, the 3rd and 7 run with David Johnson frustrated a lot of people, and then you know, the bubble screen that, you know, we got used to seeing when B.O.B. was here, frustrated. I I haven't been too critical of the coordinators just because I don't think they have a lot to work with. I think my biggest criticism of the coaches has been, I think Frank Ross done some strange stuff. The fake punt against the Patriots, whatever the hell that was. Keeping Andre Roberts in there. Desmond King had more yards in one game than Roberts did all 6. Anyone who was at training camp could tell that Desmond King was better than Roberts. We were saying that since the very beginning. And David Culley. I mean, I love the guy, and I feel like anytime you say anything about him, you got to say, well, he's a nice guy. But, I mean, it's embarrassing. The in-game decisions, not even knowing what happened in games where he thought there was a pass that didn't exist and he's having to apologize the next day, not letting them score when I'm sitting in the press box and it's an immediate conversation as soon as they even get past the 30. I mean, David Culley's looked kind of lost. He's looked in over his head. And quite honestly, how surprised should we be? Because nobody else was going to hire David Culley to be their head coach. But he's been my biggest disappointment. He and Frank Ross, another New England guy, by the way, along with those players, as far as the coaching. Lovey and Tim Kelly, I'm kind of giving a little bit of a free pass to, because if you do look at the first 6 quarters of the year, I think that Tim Kelly was doing as good of a job as you could expect with Tyrod Taylor. And Davis Mills was a guy who was supposed to be a project. So he kind of got thrown to the wolves, without Tunsil and with some other injuries. So I'm being a little bit easier on them, than I typically would be in previous years when I thought the talent was a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think there was a throw where Nico Collins, I think it was a comeback, or it must be a comeback because it was longer than a hitch, but he came back wide open and the throw landed 4 yards short of him out of bounds. And it's just basic stuff like that where you think, okay, that was going to happen, maybe nerves, you can write it off, but it's all over his Stanford tape, so it's inherent in him. He has those mistakes. So when I saw that, that was one of the moments where you thought, well, I just don't think the kid's got it. So, and look, he's so raw. There's a lot of development to be had there. And I heard McLean on the radio with you today saying they might put him back in late in the season. But I think if Tyrod comes back, is it reasonable to think he'll attain the level that he did early in the season when you think you've got all that momentum with training camp reps, pre-season, get off to, a good start, but it was against Jacksonville before the injury. But do you think he'll come back and give the team a boost? It's hard to see it based on the last sort of 3 road trips particularly.
I mean, if he does, I don't think it happens Sunday. With Aaron Donald, and I think Aaron Donald hurt both of Carson Wentz's ankles, and I think he was in on Russell Wilson's thumb. So, it's hard to imagine, with Jalen probably locking down Cooks. It's hard to imagine it happening Sunday. And I just don't. I don't think he's going to look as good as he did those 6 quarters. I think the offense will look a little bit better, but I almost think it's cruel to put him out there this Sunday with, Donald and them coming to town. Maybe though, maybe he can get back to what he was early, but I think it's going to be a little bit like somewhere in between, what we've known Tyrod Taylor to be and what we saw the first 6 quarters of the season. Yeah,
I think it's got to level out and sort of regress to the mean in a way. I suppose probably the big highlight was defensive front getting after it. Jonathan Greenard looks like, the irony of it all. Yeah, he looks like a player. And it's probably not how he's doing it, but he's certainly been productive. And there was a couple of clips of him floating about on Twitter today that he was just the high motor chasing everything when Kyler was going from sideline to sideline. And he's a guy that wants it. He's a guy that's, big school guy. And all the irony was B.O.B. didn't even want him, and it looks like probably the best player we've picked in the last 2 drafts at this stage.
Yeah, I remember B.O.B. cussing at the Zoom, messing with the Zoom, as he said. Grenard looks good. I think Malik Collins looks good. He should have had multiple sacks. That was probably one of the worst roughing the passer penalties that you've seen in a while. I think Amenahu looked good. For whatever reason, he was in the doghouse. So, there's some guys on the D. Roy Lopez. Roy Lopez looks, for where you drafted him, I think you'd be pleased with what Roy Lopez is. So, I think, defensive line is one of Lovey's specialties. And I think, if you look at those guys, I'm not saying that they're like future all pros or anything like that, but I think Lovey's done a pretty good job with some of those younger guys on the D line.
Yeah, and definitely Lopez is out snapped his draft slate, and I think that'll be I mean, his pad level's a bit high, and he kind of gets turned quite easily, and he's facing the sideline at times. But I think there is definitely something there in terms of his upside to be getting this many snaps above guys like Ross Blacklock. I know he came back from COVID this week and actually flashed a couple of times on the tape that I saw got in the backfield, just shy of making a play. So hopefully he's one that we can take forward as well as part of that group. But what do you make of the continual changes in the secondary? Because it seems a continual tinkering of benching guys, bringing guys back in. You know, Tavir Thomas is blitzing at the slot in Buffalo. Then we've got Vernon Hargreaves doesn't play for a couple of weeks, and I know it's fine margins with limited talent. Is that Lovey overthinking it, or is that generally that what he thinks that's the best to do to put those guys in a position to be successful?
I just don't think there's an ideal combination any way you slice it with these guys. I just think it's it's a bad secondary. It's probably the worst secondary that I've ever seen covering the NFL and watching the NFL. And I just think it's a matter of when someone plays bad, you put someone else in. And when you have this level of talent, that guy's going to play bad too. And you're just going to keep shuffling. I think that's just really where they are with the secondary. You traded your best guy, Bradley Roby. Lonnie Johnson, I don't even think he's on the screen half the time. Sometimes it just seems like interceptions get thrown to him. He seems pleased with his performance though, but Lonnie's struggling, and I just don't think there's much there besides Justin Reed. And I actually kind of feel bad for him because, he comes into the league and he's playing with, Tyron and all that. And then all of a sudden, he's playing with Eric Murray and Lonnie Johnson and AJ Moore. And, he's just you can't even really, when you're in the position Justin Reed is in, you can't really, and I know he started out good. He actually started out really good this year, but you're in a situation where you can't even just focus on you because you're basically having to babysit. Lonnie's 20 yards backfield. He's reacting late, yelling at people, missing tackles. The corners are what they are. I just don't think there's a good combination there. And it's really, really, really tough for them. And it's really, really tough for Justin.
Yeah, and you think the coaching staff must be in Lonnie's ear because, okay, the ball hits you in the numbers a couple of times and great, you make a play, but that Zach Ertz touchdown, that was, that and then the 3rd and 24 and AJ Green at the end of the first half when they scored a quick fire 10 points, and that really swung the game and it killed it at that point. But the holes in the zone, the linebackers just continue, and it's the same problems every week, and it's so boring talking about it every week, but it's the same problems. You can't get the right depth. There's a big hole in between the corner and the safety. You always see Mitchell diving for the ball late because he's out of position, and I think teams will just keep picking on that and keep picking on that. Yeah. I think no more so than the Rams this weekend because they've got a high-powered offense, and it seems to be ticking with Stafford this year so far.
Yeah, and it's always funny because I think it's really easy. I think it's kind of lazy sometimes when like media types or fans, some fans will like immediately blame Lovie Smith or whoever the DC is, and it's like when you watch it, like I can promise you that Lovie Smith didn't tell Lonnie Johnson to react 6 seconds late and keep backpedaling when the ball was in the air. Like that's not what he's coaching him to do. But bad players, like, I think a lot of times we assume like bad players are slower or they're weak or they're whatever. But sometimes bad players just don't have instincts and they just don't know what they're doing on the field. And there's a reason that those guys are available for 1-year contracts or, you can't trade them if you want to. And I think that's just kind of the case with some of these guys. Like you just mentioned it, like, the spacing and the gaps and all that. Like Lovie Smith's not telling them to do a lot of the stuff they're doing. They just once the quarterback says hut, like you have what the coach tells you, you have your instincts, and hopefully that combination like works out to where you make plays. Like great players, like whether it was Kareem when he was here, JJ, just pick a defensive player, Aaron Glenn, like a lot of times they weren't necessarily doing what they were coached to do. They just had those football instincts. And a lot of times that took over and they were able to do some things. And a lot of times they were where they were supposed to be and they make plays. I just think, there's just a lot of talent lacking on D.
Yeah, and I think that it's a strange combination because you've got basically the only time I can remember them blitzing consistently when you're down in Buffalo. They don't bring any pressure up front because they're so scared to get beaten in behind. But then the last few weeks we've given up big play after big play. So I think they're damned. Lovey's probably damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I think, and that's probably the back of his mind.
Same thing. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Really is.
So I mean, I suppose, and he knows it's not. And I think as well, just on the rounding off the game at the weekend, I think they've kind of almost got this mantra of you don't turn it over, you're almost guaranteed to win, which is not exclusively true.
Yeah, and that's what Coley said this year. We made fun of it a lot, and it almost seems like he's like living that. And I know he's not the one calling plays, but if we go 3 and out, we're good. No, you're not. Like you're not good if you go 3 and out. Like it's like there's like a fear to turn the ball over to where it's almost like they think, and it doesn't even work out for them, but they think like, oh, at the end of the game, if the other team has more turnovers than us, then we get an extra 20 points or something like that. It doesn't work like that. But for some reason, they really do have a mindset of, if we go 3 and out, we're okay. Not necessarily.
Yeah, and I think it was always going to be a tough year, and I think these 2 games, and I can't see any other outcome than a paste and copy of the last 2 games on Sunday as well, unless you get a big break of the ball, like 3 turnovers like week 1, and even though a team that throws for 300 and whatever yards it was Trevor Lawrence got, you managed to sort of pad the score out and keep a buffer there. But yeah, it feels like Sean McVay and his offense will come to town Sunday and probably put on a similar show.
Cooper Kupp, very scary thought there, and then you got Woods, you got those receivers. That's I'm assuming, I haven't looked at my fantasy rankings yet. I don't have either one on my team, but I'm assuming that Kupp and Woods are, near the top of fantasy and daily fantasy rankings heading into Sunday.
Yeah, and I think as well, you've got, there's some of the route combinations, and there was a touchdown, which I don't think, it's not even in the route tree that he ran, but just in the red zone, and they're playing at a high level, and it's kind of come together quite well. So I think it'll be a buzzsaw, I think, through that secondary, particularly, regardless of what the guys do up front. And I think probably the pressure up front as well is probably, if you were to look at that Arizona team, I know a lot of people have called them complete, but for me, I think that they're weak up front in the offensive line, and that's obviously nullified by Kyler's athleticism. But it certainly feels like that probably could be their undoing if there is one. I think so.
Yeah, I'm still not buying them as the top team in the NFC. I think I could probably name 3 or 4 that I believe more in. Now, I've disrespected teams like Arizona before, and they've made me look silly, but I think the Rams are better. I think I know that they got the Rams earlier this year, but I think the Rams are better. I think Tampa Bay is better. I think Dallas might be better when they're at full strength, when they get, Lyle Collins, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Gallup back or whoever. So I might be guilty of sleeping on the Cardinals, but that's just, I even think I would take Green Bay in a playoff series, but who knows? Kyler could be emerging as, one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league in front of our very eyes. I think he's definitely one of the best. But I'm still guilty of sleeping on Arizona for sure. I think this Rams team is better.
Yeah, definitely. Talking to Green Bay, we also had the introductory press conference from Whitney Merciless, a guy who benefited from this franchise, who was given disproportionate treatment by the previous regime. For some unknown reason, they restructured his contract, then cut him, so it increased his dead cap bit. But everybody wants to say Caserio's done a great job, but as I said, I'll reserve judgment for 3 years' time. But I think with his comments, he said something about a cloud being over the franchise, and there's issues, or it goes right up to the tippy top, was his quote. And I think that's quite damning in a sense, because you've got a guy who has got no axe to grind, because he was almost given a reparation contract because he outplayed that 4-year $26 million deal he signed in 2015. He gets $54 million over 4 in the tail end of 2019, when the biggest issue with that defense at the end of that season was the pass rush. So everybody knew it was ill-fated. It was coming. Obviously, we've made it worse for ourselves by restructuring so we could sign, DeMarcus Walker and whoever. But But was that not probably, just again going back to that earlier point, is that not another sign that we're not out of the troubles that I've seen us been put in this position? I think there's still a lot to be fixed on Kirby.
For sure. I mean, I think that was damning. It was honest. I think it was respectable. I think it was unselfish. And I think that, if you work somewhere and you're getting favorable treatment, but your company the stock is dropping and it's plummeting and the performance is going way down, and other people are getting treated bad, or, there's some stuff going on, then, you don't think you work for a good company regardless of, what's going on with you. And I thought that was very honest of Whitney. And let's be honest, man, just because you give someone money doesn't mean that someone respects your organization. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that have gotten cut by the Patriots or, cut by good teams that respect the decision because it's business and they understand that. So just because you give a guy an undeserved contract, I don't think that you bought the right for him not to be honest. But I thought it was damning because, that's a guy that's one of their culture fits and a guy who, is the right kind of guy and a Texan for life, as Cal McNair said. And Whitney Merciless comes out and says that. So I do think it's damning. I think it's accurate. I think they do have problems at the tippity top. And I don't know what happens to eliminate those problems at the tippity top. Because, Whitney, three days from leaving, 8 months or whatever into this culture change that they say they're creating, Whitney Merciless is saying they got problems at the tippity tops. So yeah, that's tough.
I think obviously just as we started recording, there was a news emerging. You'll probably see it by the time you listen to this, but there's a report out there that Cal's put his foot in his mouth, like father, like son, I suppose, in that sense. So, but I thought which is a bit of a controversial issue, so we'll not bother wasting time on it. But I think the issue with Albert Breer talking last week, and he said to a number of guys on a podcast, and he said Cal, or the owner, he never actually said Cal explicitly, so I'm assuming it's Cal, hates Deshaun, him, and they don't get on, and which is a huge departure from the bumbling, committed to excellence kind of guy that just sits there and as if he's just been fed the lines from the PR department. And look, he might have a steely side behind him when the cameras are off. It's hard to see that, but I thought that was an odd characterization from somebody who's very, very close and very familiar with Nick Caserio.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, whether Cal hates Deshaun or not, I don't know. I think there's context clues that Deshaun doesn't think much of Cal, and maybe even more than context clues. But
yeah.
I guess that maybe Cal does dislike Deshaun. I mean, Deshaun's wanting to get out of his organization, so I could understand that. There's obviously some bad blood, so Deshaun has to hate somebody or something. So I didn't make too much of what Albert said there. I know John McClain has kind of, said that they don't hate each other, which I guess, or he said Cal's never said anything to him about it, but there's obviously some beef, some bad blood.
Yeah, it's a strange one because it just doesn't seem like, from everything you've seen, and every time he goes out in front of the media, he does more damage than good. And like, was another example of that today. In Bally Sports or whatever it is. I never heard of it until right now, but I think they
don't need any more bad publicity. Like,
well,
they don't need it. Like, they don't need any bad publicity. Like, there's already problems. There's already trust issues with Cal. Like, they don't need it. That's the problem.
That's it. And it's not, I would assume it's not, considering some of the behaviour that goes on in the league, it's and some of the accusations and stuff is not enough to get myself. So like it's a non-story in my opinion. In some ways, it's just people looking to snipe, but and pick holes at what's a wounded animal right now, and it doesn't look like it's got any plan to get any better. The only way we will get better, and the lifeline will be when we move on from Deshaun, and those picks are potentially something you can use to fortify an ailing roster of players that just aren't competitive on a Sunday. It all comes out in a very, very public manner, all from local guys. Last week, Landry putting out, it's happening, it's on the cards, it's going to happen this week. Deal's not done. Felt kind of a bit forced at the time. What do you make of this sort of latest raft of Deshaun rumours?
Well, I just know that, we play Follow the Source on our show. And I know that, when Berman and McClain get a story at the same time, it's coming from the organization. That might be too much information, but that's just what I know. Like, I mean, that's not from asking McClain, I just know. I know that when they share a story, it's coming from the organization. And I know that McClain, he's not going to just come out and say it if someone important isn't telling him that. So obviously somebody important wants it out there that Deshaun's going to be moved or it's going to be close. So I have no reason not to believe that. But I do hope, and my biggest hope, and I think the most important thing is that it's 100% Nick Caserio's decision and that he is going to get max equity for Deshaun, because I don't understand the point of doing it right now. I think that there is going to be more suitors in the offseason. I think that Miami and Carolina aren't going anywhere in the offseason. I get what could happen. I know that there's all the well, if this happens, but based on everything that I've read, based on everyone that I've talked to, based on everything that I've gathered with the information I have right now, I just don't think that Deshaun Watson's going to get kicked out of the league or something like that. So I just think that it would be a better decision to hold on to him and wait till maybe the Giants, the Eagles, hell, the Raiders, the Broncos, who knows who else are trying to get him, because then you'll have more people involved in the negotiations, and I think that only raises the price.
Yeah, and I suppose the one thing that did make me change it yesterday, and I saw you tweeting about this as well, that when the Rams traded Kenny Young to Denver for 2024 picks, which I think the wide understanding, or certainly that understanding I had, was you can only do 3 years out when you got to the draft, but it looks like you can do 3 and then 4 at the draft. So if somebody could offer three first rounds over the next couple of years, it's fine. But I think when you look at the Miami one, it seems everybody seems to be hell bent on pushing that agenda there and that narrative. I think roughly, if you go off the old school point system, the 3 picks, assuming that they're going to be 15 plus for San Francisco at the end of this year, you never know how that takes off with Trey Lance in year 2. So the 2 of those picks are San Fran's, and one of them is Philadelphia. Is Miami. And assuming Deshaun goes there, then you assume they're going to have at least an 8 or 9 win season. So when you think of those picks versus where the current slated picks are. For Philly, it's about 40% of the points. So I think that move now would seem an ill-fated one if you just want to chase after an immediate return. I know there's all the kind of legal stuff and going on, but I think you assume nothing and just let it play out. And I think there's enough money and power on one side of that argument to probably feel like they're in with a chance to get their way. Otherwise, they would have written checks, I think, in my opinion. So. It feels like dealing with Miami now could be a huge mistake, and that would probably, in my opinion, Caserio not exceeding max value for probably the biggest resource he needs to flip to give himself a chance of success in this job.
Yeah, I thought it was 3 and 4, and then Texans Cap talked me out of it, and then he confirmed with the Texans that it is 3 and 4. So it's 3 years out. And based on that, I need 4 firsts from Miami. I mean, I'm sorry, I need it. If I'm gonna trade you right now, Deshaun Watson, and obviously you think that he's gonna play, and I'm doing it before I could get to the offseason, and I have Philadelphia with your pick, and I have the Giants with extra picks, and I have all these other teams, and more time has gone by, then I'm going to need the 4 firsts. And that's going to be a starting point. And then I might even ask for your 3 seconds. And I know people will say, well, that's asking. No, it's not. And the suspension doesn't mean anything too. That's the funniest thing to me is he might get suspended 6 games. Who gives a rat's ass? People draft quarterbacks. San Francisco traded 2 first-round picks or whatever it was, 3 to move up and get Trey Lance, and he wasn't even their week 1 starter. Okay, so they were willing to wait for someone that you don't know what he's going to be. They were willing to wait however long it took for Trey Lance, and they were willing to trade multiple first-round picks for it. Patrick Mahomes got drafted by the Chiefs, and he didn't play all year. What Deshaun Watson is. So the suspension means nothing. That is irrelevant to me. And what are you really trying to do? The best thing that could happen to Miami is they trade for Deshaun Watson, and then all of a sudden the NFL comes out and says, we're going to suspend him 6 games. That's it. 6 games. Boom. Oh, You miss the 6 games of a season in which you're 1-6, 1-7, and then he's full go next year. So that's it. Like, that's the best thing that could happen. So I don't care about the suspension. And when in a world in which Jamal Adams is getting traded for 2 firsts, Laramie Tunsil's getting traded for 2 firsts, and Jalen Ramsey's getting traded for 2 firsts, and there's even more icing on that cake. Second round picks in the case of Tunsil or whatever. Like, you can't convince me that 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, regardless, is fair value. So for me, Miami's got to come with 4 firsts, or else we can just wait and we can talk after the season. I just don't. 3 firsts is not going to do it for me in this situation with this quarterback and with that contract. Like, I know it's a heavy contract, but the CBA, the cap's going to keep going up. They're about to have the Amazon deal in a few years. Kyler's going to get paid a hell of a lot of money. I think he's going to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. By the time it's in year 2, I think Herbert's probably going to have his extension. So that contract's actually going to be a bargain pretty soon, just like it was, for a lot of these guys when they were the highest paid. And at one point, Derek Carr was the highest paid quarterback because of it. So, yeah, you're going to have to come with 4 firsts, or else I'm just going to have to hold off on it. McClain's saying 3 1s and 2 2s. That would be disappointing for me. And I do understand the variables. I'm very aware of what could happen, but that's just not how I would function if I was Nick Caserio. And I wouldn't fault him. Like, if Nick Caserio holds off, I'm not going to use hindsight. Just like I'm not blaming Lovie Smith or Tim Kelly. Like, if he holds off and then we find out Deshaun Watson's going to jail or something, I'm not going to sit here and say he should have done it. His job is to get max value for Deshaun Watson, the most equity possible. And if he's not getting 4 1s, I think he's doing a major disservice.
Well, he's got to be worth at least double a box safety's value at your football team, if not a bigger multiplier than that. So, and the contract as well, I think he's because the bonus, we've paid the bonus money, he's banked that, so I think it works out roughly 28 million APY for the remainder of the deal, which, considering the new equilibrium that's about to be found with maybe not Mayfield, but certainly with Lamar Jackson. Well, maybe not, because his mum's negotiating it, but somebody's going to break that barrier. So I think there's going to be a jump there. And that 28 million is going to look pretty good now that we've sunk all the bonus money into it. So I've always said if it was only 3 years you could get, it'd be 3 firsts and 3 seconds as an absolute minimum, or I wouldn't even talk to you. And I'd be asking what extra are you putting on that for us, and it's 2 or 3 rookie contract players. I don't want a single veteran. I don't want a vested veteran. I want rookie contract players. And because especially if Miami want it now, if you want to take in, if you were buying a house or an apartment or a car or something, and you said to them, "Look, I want to take this off the market early," you'd have to pay a premium for that. So I think 4 first plus is at this point, knowing that now that we can do 3 years worth is possible. But yeah, I think it's a 10-year annuity of a rare resource that nobody else has. And this college pipeline looks weaker than it has done in previous years. You never know, but certainly it feels like all the market forces are trending towards the Texans here. And
the other thing about it is, and look, I understand both sides. We talk about this daily on the show, but it's like, oh well, he has this going. That's the only reason he's available. You've never had a 25-year-old quarterback in his prime traded. So yeah, obviously there's something there. But that's why he's available. Yeah. That and he wanted out, but that's separate. I'm just talking about from them talking about the risk. Like, you don't get opportunities to get 25-year-old quarterbacks in their prime. So there's obviously something going on, whether it's a dysfunctional organization, whether it's the off-field stuff. Yeah, he's available. And Miami and Carolina and all these other teams aren't willing to trade for him. And just rolling the dice saying, oh, he might go to jail. They're obviously doing their homework too. So anything can happen, but I'm holding off. You got to play hardball if you're Nick Caserio.
And I think if a billionaire who can do anything he wants at a snap of a finger is not, and I think it was Aaron Wilson reported that the Eagles sent somebody, a private investigator, Houston, to look into the situation. So these things happen, and there's more than enough resource to do the diligence there, and there's more than enough resource on Watson's side. And I'm not reserving any judgment. That's what the whole court system's there for to do. But I think the fact that they're willing to take this right to the end just shows you that they feel they're comfortable with the chance they've got to clear his name, and we all know that the fact that there was a compensation offer made, and I think Georgina Anderson tweeted this out today, that they offered compensation, but they didn't want to sign up to a non-disclosure or a disclosure rather on the end. So there's obviously a lot to it. We'll never know the full truth, but I'd like to move on, but now is not the right time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. You gotta play the hard ball. And look, man, like up till Sunday before noon, I don't know what time it was there, but like before noon on Sunday, like it was believed just to be Miami. It took 3/4 of football, about 2 hours for Carolina to be in. Like it literally took 2.5 hours for Carolina to be like, screw this. We want to get in the mix now. Like, What the hell could happen in 10 weeks? Like, what the hell could happen in months to where it only took 2.5 hours for a team to be in on this Deshaun Watson thing? That's why I'm really worried about the timing. And I'm hoping the compensation is something that's satisfying for Texans fans because I know they want to see some young talent out there, and they want to see, if you're going to lose your franchise quarterback, that you're at least going to have, something to show for it.
Yeah, and I think people kind of say, what about the PR storm and all this kind of stuff? I say, well, if you've read anything about David Tepper, and a guy who worked for Goldman Sachs, these people do not give a shit about PR storm. They'll do what they think want to do and what makes them successful, because they know at the end of the day they're focused on dollars, and that's what he brings: a winning franchise, a winning quarterback who went to college in that region. Who they're trying to expand themselves into the south of Carolina with that new training facility and everything. I think it's perfect for them. So if there was any team willing to pay with an aggressive owner who manages his own hedge fund, who can see the true value, probably more than other people would. If anybody was going to overpay in the media eyes, I think it might be Tepper. But we'll see. And as you said, it took 2 hours. What can happen in 6 months? 6 months, a hell of a long time in this league, and you see so much change. And Denver not there with it, but. There's so many teams it could be, and I think New York as well. That's got to be a perfect one, because they've just been starved of success for so long for a huge market team and a big, and again, people say, Deshaun wants to maybe go Miami because it's a lifestyle aspect. Well, New York's probably the same in that sense. So if he wants to be, if that's what he's looking for, I'm not saying it necessarily is, but it's certainly been intimated that's the case, and then so be it. But it's just a hellishly sad story. I think that should have been the guy for us for 15 years, and we got 4. So there you go.
You thought you were set. You thought you were set there. I mean, you thought you were set, but you're not. Yeah.
And you're at UT, man, Landry. Any guys in the college landscape that have caught your eye this year you think could be in conversation?
I would love to have Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, I would really love to have Thibodeau as a Texan. That's the guy that I'm really focused on right now. None of these quarterbacks excite me at all, and that's one of the most frustrating things, is that I think this is probably going to be one of the weaker quarterback drafts that we've had in a long time, going back to, I think, when E.J. Manuel was the first quarterback selected. But I mean, right now Thibodeau is the hope. You probably got to have the number 1 pick there, but maybe you're going to go offensive line. There's a lot there. There's some good offensive linemen there, but I think Thibodeau is the guy that, if you're a Texans fan, you want that, cornerstone game changer, Myles Garrett, Chase Young type guy. I think that's the guy.
Do you think he's the same level? I watched the UCLA game back on the Sunday morning, and I didn't realize he was only 20 when I tweeted this out, but I did think he's got a bit of work to do. I mean, his raw athleticism is undisputed. You see that when he gets people off the edge, but I thought maybe his hand fighting, pad level, and some of that technique stuff, it could be refined, and it will be refined at the next level if he's want to be a down and down out pass rusher. But again, he's only 20, but I did think he looked a wee bit raw, and maybe made you a little bit concerned versus maybe like the kid from A&M, is it Neil? And then guys like Derek Stingley, who are a bit more refined as a top end pick, but I suppose if you go with him, you're maybe going upside.
Yeah, I mean, it would just take the right coaching. I would like to see, if Lovey's still here, Lovey get his hands on him, because I think Lovey can do a good job with someone like that. And that's the thing you're mentioning, these defensive linemen. It's where Lovey specializes, helping those guys out. So if you're gonna look at those guys, I think it helps. I think Thibodeau, with the right coach, he can be everything you want from that guy to build the I guess build the team right. I don't know. It feels weird saying that about a DM, but be that first potential upper echelon type of guy.
You just think how many times is this going to happen to us? I think the 2014 is the same. The Mario Williams draft was the same, and I just think it's you thought you caught a break of luck with finding a guy that Rick Smith went up for and nobody else in the building.
Oh, go back to David Carr over Julius Peppers. I mean, that was probably something that would have changed the whole beginning of the franchise if they would have gone Julius instead of David.
Well, that's it, and I think you can luck into guys at times. And I suppose maybe after all this, I would use some luck. We don't know, but I don't think the luck will start on Sunday anyway. But looking forward to the draft eventually. But you feel almost regrettable saying that, after 7 games.
It is what it is. We didn't make these moves.
Well, that's it. That's what I keep saying. People embrace the slog, and to a degree, it's all cyclical. If you can find a guy, and you're once you get a quarterback in, you're 3 years away from a 10-11 squad, aren't you? 9 times out of 10. So. We've got the Astros on tonight. Landry, you watching? I've been a couple of Astros games when I've been over, and I think it's a testament, probably the antithesis of the Texans in terms of sustained success and building a core player rosters that can continually get you back to the big dance because you've built it the right way. Yeah,
and it's just interesting. Sometimes when a team is built, there's one approach or there's one mindset that leads to it. And with this Astros team, I mean, you can go through every area in which you evaluate a general manager. And this goes back to Jeff Luna, really. And I think James Click has done some of it too. And it's just all been on point, bring in the young guys, Correa, Altuve, Bregman, sign guys under the radar, Yuli Gurriel, Martin Maldonado. Hell, they signed Luis Garcia and Framber Valdez and Urquidy. I think it was $15,000 for Framber Valdez. Sign the middle tier free agents, Michael Brantley. Be patient with your young guys and don't give up on them. Like Kyle Tucker, the Yordan Alvarez trade, I think was for a bag of peanuts. Josh Fields to the Dodgers, just every way. I make moves at the deadline. Kendall Graveman, and going back to Osuna and Presley, every way in which you can measure, the right way to bring in players and talent and stuff. They've done it, and it's just really a testament to that. And that's the thing about Caserio is part of me says, well, it's, there's not much. Who cares if he, is flipping draft picks, and who cares if, this free agent doesn't work? But you would like to be able to hang your hat on something that he does well, because you're not necessarily going to do what the Astros do, where no matter what it is, you do it right. But you'd like to see him good at something at this point. But they're the epitome of just. It's not even just a lesson for the Texans. I think it's a lesson for, any organization. Just, man, and I don't think there's a formula. I just think it's making the right decisions. And they just seem to do it. Every time they have to make one, it just seems like they do make the right decision. Yeah, and that's the worry that I have it back in my head, or I continue to have, is the guys like James Littford and Matt Bazergan are equally, if not more complicit than Jack Easterby, but kind of slide under the radar. Caserio's not brought in much fresh blood in that front office. Guys who have made a number of years of poor talent evaluation. If that's still people making the calls or making the influence to make the calls, makes you wonder if you'll hit on all those picks. Should you get them? And that's the bit that worries me. Yeah, well, at least we're going to get to watch a draft day one with some sort of interest. Well, that's it, and it's in Vegas this year, so it's well worth attendance, I would think. So hopefully we can make that happen. But I think I'm gonna have to go check that out for sure. I got 2 more Vegas trips. I got one in December, and then I got one in January. So I'm a big fan, so I might as well just try to make the trip for the draft too. I know they got the NFL jersey on Caesar now and stuff, and they're doing it in that pond in front of Bellagio. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to check it out. Yeah, hopefully it can be a couple of days that turn this thing in the right direction. But Landry, thank you very much for your time, mate. Much appreciated for having you on and talking, trying to make some sense of this crazy old team for an hour. It's an impossible task, man. But it's always fun talking to you about it.
Appreciate it. Well, thanks to Landry for his time. If you want to check any of the weekly articles out at podcast@texans.com, and we'll speak to you again after the Rams next week.